It was supposed to be a formality. A quiet, respectful reading of a will after a deeply personal loss. But the moment the attorney spoke my name, everything unraveled like a cruel trick played by the universe. My name is Valerie Morgan, and until that day I thought I understood the hierarchy of love in my family. My older sister, Cassandra, was always the pride of the Morgans. I was merely tolerated, the artist, the dreamer, the disappointment. No one ever said it outright, but they didn't have to. The polite silences at dinner, the tight smiles when I mentioned a new gallery job, the way my father called me idealistic, as if it were a disease. So when our grandfather, Richard Morgan, founder of Morgan Holdings and patriarch of our dynasty, passed away, I went home expecting discomfort. Maybe a few pointed questions about my latest hobby. But nothing could have prepared me for what waited behind that polished mahogany door. Grandpa Richard had always been different, as he was tough. Anyone who built a real estate empire from scratch in post-war America had to be. But with me he had a softness no one else seemed to understand. When I was 13 he bought me my first sketchbook. When I was 20 he snuck into one of my first gallery shows unannounced. He didn't stay long, didn't say a word afterward, but a week later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Don't ever stop making the world more beautiful. That single sentence meant more than anything my parents had ever said. But love in the Morgan household was always transactional. Cassandra had followed the family blueprint. Boarding school, Ivy League MBA, straight into the firm. Brilliant, polished, fiercely loyal to our parents' legacy. She married William Rothschild, a rising star in corporate law. Together they were the shining future of the Morgan name. I, on the other hand, rented a studio in Brooklyn, juggled barista shifts to pay for paint, and prayed my landlord wouldn't raise rent again. I knew I wasn't the heir. I wasn't even an afterthought. That's why I almost laughed when Mr. Reynolds, the family attorney, read Cassandra's inheritance first. $10 million in liquid assets. A share in Morgan Holdings. Full control of the Newport estate. My mother beamed. My father nodded with pride. Cassandra didn't smile, she was too composed for that, but her fingers tightened around William's hand in a quiet gesture of victory. Then Mr. Reynolds looked at me. To my granddaughter, Valerie Morgan, he said carefully, I leave the contents of a sealed envelope, to be opened privately in her presence only. The silence was violent. My parents exchanged sharp glances. Cassandra turned toward me with a flicker of concern, quickly replaced by disdain. Humiliation crawled under my skin like insects. Was this a final insult? Sentimental goodbye? A note saying be strong while everything else went to her. My father stood, smoothing his jacket. I believe this is self-explanatory, he said. Richard and I agreed long ago that Valerie needed to learn to make her own way. I suppose this is his way of reinforcing that lesson. I stayed silent. My hands trembled too hard to form a fist. But when I met Mr. Reynolds's eyes, there was a flicker there, something that told me it wasn't over. When the others left in a storm of hushed arguments and stiff glares, Mr. Reynolds handed me the envelope. This, he said, was prepared over 5 years ago with extreme care. Your grandfather wanted you to have it away from family influence. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a letter written in my grandfather's uneven script. Direct, emotional, deeply personal. He wrote about how he saw me. Really saw me. He remembered the times I struggled, unsupported, but never gave up. He wrote about my grandmother, Elise, a painter before she married him. A woman my parents never spoke of. He said I reminded him of her. And then came the revelation. For over 2 decades, Richard Morgan had been quietly collecting contemporary art. The private collection was worth more than $25 million. And he had left it to me entirely, along with a gallery space in downtown Boston, a trust fund to manage it, and a luxury apartment above it. It was mine. Not Cassandra's. Not my parents'. You are my legacy, Valerie, he wrote. Not because of money, but because you see the world as it could be, not just as it is. I sat there stunned. All the years of being overlooked, of silent comparisons, of shame. And here was the truth, I had never been less. I had simply been standing in the wrong spotlight. The weeks that followed blurred into a whirlwind. My father filed legal challenges, of course. But my grandfather had anticipated it. Video recordings, medical records, airtight witnesses. Cassandra remained silent, though I could feel her fury echoing in the distance. I meanwhile threw myself into the work. Renovations began. Mr. Reynolds introduced me to Julia, a seasoned gallery director and longtime friend of my grandfather. She became my mentor, teaching me contracts, consignments, shipping logistics, curatorial strategies. In the climate-controlled storage facility, I pored over the collection. Breathtaking pieces by Basquiat, Richter, and lesser-known, but brilliant, contemporaries. And then, tucked in its own corner, a section labeled only Valerie. 12 of my own paintings, purchased anonymously over the years. The heart of the collection, the curator said. I ran my fingers across the frames, stunned. He had been building my confidence long before I even realized it. Still, the loneliness was real. The silence from my family was deafening. Every day I expected a phone call, a visit, a message, anything to show they understood. None came. But in that silence, something else grew. Peace. One rainy afternoon, just as the gallery's opening approached, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up from a half-assembled sculpture to see Cassandra. She was soaked from the rain, her trench coat clinging to her heels. "You're really doing it," she said, glancing around. I didn't respond. "I didn't know how," she sighed. "I didn't come here to fight. I waited." She walked slowly through the gallery, pausing at one of my canvases, a tangled mass of blues and golds titled Inheritance. "It's beautiful," she whispered. This time her voice wasn't condescending. It was soft. "Thank you," I replied. He turned to me. "I still think it was unfair." I met her eyes. "I think you've always had what you needed. This was what I needed." She nodded. "Maybe I just didn't see it before. Maybe none of yous did." That was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get. Strangely, it was enough. We stood in silence, surrounded by half-hung paintings and the lingering scent of fresh paint. Cassandra's presence felt surreal, like a ghost from a former life wandering into my new world, uncertain of where she belonged. Her eyes scanned the room again, slower this time. Less judgment, more curiosity. She rested a hand on the back of a flea market chair I had refurbished myself, as if grounding herself in something unfamiliar. "I didn't know he planned all this," she admitted. "None of us did." Mother cried when she found out the gallery was real. "I didn't know either," I said. "Not until that day." A small smile tugged at her lips. "He was always a mystery, wasn't he?" I didn't reply. The truth was more complicated. To them he was a mystery. To me he was a believer. "You'll have your opening soon?" she asked. "In 2 weeks. The theme is transformation." Her eyebrows lifted. "Fitting." I studied her carefully, waiting for sarcasm, but none came. He was sincere. "You should come," I offered before I could stop myself. "If you want." She hesitated, vulnerable for the first time I could remember. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "It's not about them," I said softly. "It's about me." She gave a small nod. "I'll think about it." Then she left. After she was gone, I stood at the center of the gallery and let myself feel everything. The fear, the excitement, the possibility, the grief. My family might never accept this new version of me. But I no longer needed their approval. The next 2 weeks blurred. Installations, press interviews, finalizing lighting, signage. Julia insisted I include 3 of my own pieces. "Your grandfather wanted this," she said. "Don't hide from it." Opening night arrived. I wore a simple black dress that had once belonged to my grandmother, restored and tailored to fit. The gallery buzzed with energy. Artists, collectors, students, strangers curious about the new space on Tremont Street. I moved through the crowd like a dream, introducing painters, explaining themes, sipping champagne someone else had paid for. And then I saw her. Cassandra stood near the back wall, dressed in deep blue, alone. Her eyes flicked from piece to piece until they landed on Inheritance again. She didn't move for a long time. I joined her, my heart pounding. "You came," I said softly. "I wanted to see it." Her voice was steady. "And it's beautiful. Alive. I didn't know art could feel like this." I smiled. Neither did I, until I started believing it mattered. She turned to me, hesitating. "You've built something real, Valerie." "I'm still angry. I still think we lost something." "I didn't take anything from you," I said firmly, holding her gaze. "This was never about money. It never was." "I know." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's the part one didn't understand." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But we stood together in the space I had created from nothing. And for the first time in years we were two sisters. Not adversaries, not rivals. After the last guest left and the lights dimmed, I sat alone on the worn velvet couch near the entrance, heels kicked off, the silence warm. I stared at the bronze plaque near the door. Evelyn's Gallery. In honor of Elise and Richard Morgan. I thought of them, my grandmother's watercolors hidden in boxes for decades, my grandfather's unwavering belief that I was enough just as I was. Then I thought of me, the girl who once cried in the back of a gallery because no one in her family came. The woman now standing at the center of her own world, not needing to be chosen, because she had already chosen herself. 3 months later a letter arrived. Valerie, your mother and I have been reflecting. While we still don't fully agree with your grandfather's decisions, we cannot ignore what you've accomplished. We'd like to meet for lunch if you're open to it. Your father, James Morgan. I stared at the note for a long time, not with anger but with caution. Could they really change? Did I even need them to anymore? Eventually I agreed to meet with clear boundaries. Healing was slow, strained, imperfect. But healing never comes clean. It comes jagged through half-closed doors and uncomfortable conversations. I didn't need their praise. I just needed space to grow without fighting for it. A year passed. The gallery thrived. 6 successful exhibitions. 3 young artists landing their first major sales. A feature in Art Quarterly, calling Evelyn's a beacon for voices once silenced. I launched the Morgan Foundation with part of my inheritance, funding grants for underrepresented artists, hosting free workshops, mentoring high school students who reminded me of myself. Quiet, unsure, bursting with color, just waiting to be seen. And still every morning I walked past that plaque, touched it gently and whispered, "Thank you." To anyone listening, maybe you've been overlooked. Maybe you've been told your dreams don't count. That you're too emotional, too impractical, too different. But hear me, your worth is not up for debate. Not by your family, not by society, not by those who fail to see you. You don't need their permission to shine. You just need one spark. One believer. And if no one else will, let that believer be you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to Unfair Love and share it with someone who needs to remember that they matter.